Hey everyone, welcome to this afternoon's call. This is going to be selling to a crowd. If you have ever sold from stage or you have interest in selling from stage, you want to do it better, you want to avoid all the mistakes that I have made. Let me show you what I have learned through the years of doing it wrong many more times than doing it right. And just didn't want to encourage you that if you have done it wrong more than right, you can still do pretty well. And I am living proof of that. So you don't have to be the most articulate, using $64 words or anything along those lines. You actually do better when you're just your authentic self. So it's good to see you all. Thank you for showing up today. Let me know where you're coming from. Let me know what line of work that you're in. And if you have any questions around this, like are you just learning this? Is this a skill that you're just trying to learn? Is this something you're trying to do better at? Or what questions do you have about this? What burning questions are you trying to get answered about selling from stage, selling to a crowd? What is the thing that you're trying to most learn in this? So please let me know. You're coming from Vienna. Oh, very good. Okay, Heinz, nice to meet you. I'm glad that you could join me today. And all right, so we are going to get right to this. There's a lot of information that I have on this, and Heinz, I would love to know what specifically, if you've got any specific questions around this. If there is something that if you've sold from stage before, if you've sold from webinars before, this is the sort of thing that I feel I have gotten better at with a lot of practice. And just to give you an idea, I am hosting a lot of different calls on YouTube and on Eventbrite through StreamYard. This is the platform that I use, and I like StreamYard for lots of different reasons. It's actually pretty easy to use. I'm not endorsing it or anything. I don't get paid anything. I don't even think they know I exist. But the thing is that I've got a lot of reps in, right? For this year, I'm not even sure how many different events that I've hosted, maybe 50, probably, possibly more. I'd have to check and see, but even over the last couple of weeks, I've done as many as one per day. So I'm averaging one per day over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And this is why it's important to get your reps in, because you just get better at it with practice. Preparing for pitching. Okay, very good. So this is what I'm going to show you. All right. In selling to a crowd, I just want to make sure that I understand what it is you're trying to do. When it comes to selling, there's two different buckets of selling, and I'm just kind of broad brush this really fast. One is one-to-one selling, and then there's one-to-many. I was pretty decent at one-to-one selling, and one-to-one selling is good. It's more personal. It's more tailored conversation, right? Right now, Heinz and I are having a one-to-one conversation, and it's excellent for high-ticket offers. Nothing wrong with it. But it does have limitations in that selling one-to-one can take a lot of time, right? It's expensive, and it's probably the biggest problem is it has limited reach. So again, lots of pros to it. Again, it can be more intimate, it can be more tailored. And again, it's really good for high ticket items. So if you're selling something that's expensive, and I say expensive, that's in the eye of the beholder. If I'm selling an oil well to a Saudi prince, that might not be high ticket, right? If I'm selling like a 500-ton ocean liner to a Saudi prince, that might be high ticket. So it just depends on what you're selling. But again, the cons of one-to-one selling is it does take a lot of time. It can be costly, and there is limited reach with selling one-to-one, right? This is when you're sitting literally knee to knee or shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow across a kitchen table with someone. That's difficult to do many of those in a day. And even if you had your day stacked up day after day after day, that's going to wear on you. So selling one-to-one is great, but it does have its limitations. And I like selling one-to-one. In fact, I prefer selling one-to-one because I get to know the individual a little bit better. However, I also have grown an affinity for, from the one-to-one or the one-to-many model. And the one-to-many is far more scalable, right? This is where you can get the information in front of different buying units. Now, I hate boiling it down to cold raw numbers, but this does make a lot of sense. But when you're thinking about multiple buying units, you're thinking about how many purchasing decisions are being made in the room. So when you think about that, you could be, if you're sitting down and making a buying decision from a one-to-one sales perspective, that person or that couple, or say that the mom and dad and the adult child are making one buying decision, right? That's one-to-one selling. in the context of, and that's one buying unit. For example, if you're talking to a crowd, right, or you're selling from stage, now you've got multiple buying units. So you might have, you might have one couple, you might have a single person, you might have a family of three, and each one of those represents an individual buying unit. So that's the difference, is how many buying units are making individual buying decisions. That's the difference between one-to-one selling versus one-to-many. Now let's talk about why people often hate selling. And I will tell you, this is something that I have felt personally. Sometimes I still feel this if I start going back to my old ways of selling. And I have to remind myself it's about delivering value, and it's about helping people make good choices and make good decisions, not holding people's heads underwater until they say yes. And that's why they hate selling. They feel like they have to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do. That's not selling. That's being a bully. And I don't have time for that. I don't want to be a bully. I want to make sure that I'm bringing good information to people so they can make a good buying decision. And I want to bring them information, and I want to understand the emotion behind the decision so I can help them make a good decision. And that's really what it is. A lot of times what people often hate selling, they hear this too, is that they hate asking people for money. They get to the ask, right? How true is this for anybody out there? How, let me know in the chat, how many of you feel like, oh, here comes the ask where I have to ask them for money? Ugh. And I would remember choking when I would do this on stage. It literally was like just dragging it out of me. It's like, okay, here comes the money part. And I'm so awkward. It was just, I mean, it showed in my body language how difficult that was. And I have a way of doing this where it's just natural. You're not asking people to do something. It's like, you're just saying, hey, here's the cost. And if the cost doesn't work for you, that's okay. But if you deliver enough value, and I'm going to say that a lot of times today, if you deliver enough value to where they are going to trust you to make that buying decision, then it'll be super easy to make the ask. All right. The other thing is, and I hear this too, is that they feel like they're bothering people in some weird way. Like this is something even after the sale. This is really, really true, especially if you have people that you have talked to and you have their contact information after the fact. It is your moral obligation to make sure that you're following up with them, not that you're bothering them. That is not anything that you should be concerned about as a sales individual. If you have their contact information, it is your moral obligation to follow up with them. Unless they say, hey, quit following up with me. I'm not interested, right? I'm not, this isn't no, for now. This is no, this is not for me. That's great. Or if this person does not represent an avatar or core values that you represent. Okay. And a lot of times people don't like to feel icky or gross. Like they're just trying to be really, overcoming objections and, just trying to come up with really fancy language and all of that stuff. No one wants to be this guy, right? Hopefully. Man, that looks a lot like me. I did not make that intentional. All right. I need to find a different photo for that. That guy looks sort of like me. All right. A little bit more hair. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a strategic approach to selling. We're going to hit the agenda for today. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about systems. This is specifically, and the reason I'm going over systems is because this is about you as a business owner. This is about you as someone who owns their own business and is going to be selling from stage or selling from seminars, selling from webinars. This is really important for you to understand this from a top-down perspective. Now, the reason why we're going through that is because there's certain things you have to have in place so that when you're making your offer, the offer is really important. So when you're making the offer, that you'll know what your company represents. That's why it's really important to understand the systems component, and then it's really important to understand the other side of business, which is psychology. There are systems and psychology, and you have to understand both when it comes to your business. So let's talk about from there. We're going to talk about the 4 core functions of business. We're going to be talking about some specifics when it comes to selling to a crowd or selling from stage. And then we're going to talk some different success strategies. I have some free resources that would be helpful for you. So let's get into the systems component. Everything I'm talking about, the systems component specifically, and a little bit of the psychology is in this book back here. This is on the book on stage called The Time Wealthy Advantage. I'm not here to sell that book. If you live out in the United States and you'd like a copy, my suggestion is to get it on Amazon if you're really interested. If you're inside the United States and you'd like a signed copy, you can go to strategicboardroom.com and pick up a copy. But I'm not here to sell the book. I'm just letting you know that this is where all of this stuff referencing the Viper methodology is where it comes from. So the Viper method is what I talk about all the time in my coaching with people. And I work with people as a strategist. I'm not a business coach. I'm not a life coach. I'm not anything like that. I'm a strategist. So in my work with people, and yes, I use coaching as a mechanism for that. I use strategy, I use consulting, I use coaching, I use, sometimes it's just, therapy, right? Whatever. I use all these different tools in my toolbox to help people walk through whatever it is that they're needing in their business at that moment in time. So let's go through the Viper methodology. And this is a top-down approach. So we're going to take a few minutes to go through this. Just hang in there and you'll understand why this is so important when you're selling to a crowd. So the Viper methodology stands for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. This is really important. This whole framework is really important as a business owner, because as you're going through this, you're going to understand that first and foremost, it comes down to vision. Vision is specifically where it is that you want to go. All right. And the rest of that framework, we'll talk about here in a second, but the rest of that framework is all contingent upon what your vision is. So when you're looking at your vision, it's really important you think about, okay, well, where does you want to go from a personal vision perspective, and where do you want to go from a business vision perspective? Personal vision is simply, again, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go in your life? Like, where do you want to go, Michelle? Where do you want to go, Heinz? Where do you want to go in your life if your life was not dictated by income generation? If it wasn't defined by income generation, what would it look like if you woke up with 30 million euros or 30 million pounds or $30 million in your bank account tomorrow? What would you do from day to day? Sure, you might want to be productive in some way, but if you didn't have to worry about income generation, what would it look like? And this is really important to think about that from that perspective, because the business vision is going to define how you're going to get there. This is going to reverse engineer that business to deliver that personal vision for you. And this is what I often, I get this. I understand why people answer this way. But a lot of times when I ask people what their vision is, many times they're going to answer it in a business context. I'm going to say, well, what's your vision, right? What's your vision, John? And they're like, it's like, oh, well, I really want to have 10,000 more customers, or $10 million more in revenue, or whatever, right? And I get that. The problem with that, though, is that when you only have considered your business vision, your personal vision suffers. And the danger in creating a business vision without giving any consideration to a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm just telling you that is an empty well that will never be filled. So when you're thinking about that from that perspective, again, just think about it from a personal perspective. Maybe like if you were writing your own eulogy, or if you were writing your 100th birthday speech, what would that look like? What would you want it to say, right? Or what would you say during your 100th birthday speech from a personal vision perspective? But that's not why we're here. I want to get right straight into the business vision perspective, because this is really important to help you learn how to sell from stage at a much better level. One of the things that we're going to be talking about, these 3 C's of business vision, is your core purpose, your core values, and your client avatar. Now, you might be thinking, again, why are we going through all this? Because we have to take a strategic approach first before we try to put in all these different tactics. If you want to learn these tactics at a deeper level, you have to understand why you're doing them. Because I had a mentor who really helped me sell from stage much, much better than I was about 10 years ago. And I really did learn quite a bit. And he was very, very helpful. But he was a tactician, right? It was like, I felt like I would have learned a lot better if I knew why I was doing the things, rather than just doing the things and then going, oh, and then learning it backwards from, oh, this is why you do this tactic. For me, it's helpful if I learn it from top down. So if that's an approach that works for you, this is going to make sense for you. If you prefer the other, I need you to be patient, because we're going to get to the granular stuff. But for me, it's important to make sure that you understand the why behind it. So let's get to the core purpose first and foremost. The core purpose, core purpose is specifically what business that you're in and what problems do you specifically solve. And it's important that you be specific, okay? So a lot of times when I'm asking people, like, what business are they specifically in, they're kind of vague. And this is a problem. Like for me, when I have gotten really clear on my core purpose and specifically what I do as a strategist in strategic boardroom, is fundamentally I help business owners save time. And how do I do that? Well, I help them save time through education, through distilling knowledge down to its simplest parts, and imparting that knowledge with them so they know specifically what direction they need to go in. So they can take this stuff, because they don't have the time to learn all the stuff that I know. I'm in my mid 50s and I spent the last 15 years of my life educating myself at a very deep level. on average, I read about a book every 7 to 10 days. And then I go back through that book and I research it, and I pour through everything else that I've ever read. And I make sure that I stay in tune with all that stuff, and making sure, and this is all around the 4 core functions of business, around lead generation, around sales, around operations, around accounting, and understanding both systems and psychology when it comes to business. So right now we're in the systems piece, but really understanding your core purpose is really important, because if you're vague on this at all, people are going to get confused, and it's going to show. It's going to be apparent in your conversation with them. So I've gotten much, much better in, I won't say I'm perfect by any stretch, but I have gotten so much better once I understood my core purpose. Because when people come to me with things that are outside my core purpose, I can reject it and go, that's not really what I do. People come to me and they say, hey, can you fix my bookkeeping? And I'm like, I can, but that's not what I do. Yeah, I've got a degree in accounting. I understand financial statements backwards and forwards very, very deeply, but I'm not a bookkeeper. That's not what I do. Let's go hire you a bookkeeper for $20 an hour or $30 an hour, or, $500 a month or whatever, just to get your books in order, and we'll get that sorted out. But I'm not the guy to be doing that individually. That's not what you pay me for. That would be, I would literally be the most expensive bookkeeper you ever hired. So that doesn't make sense, right? So it's really important that you understand your core purpose and be obnoxious, almost obnoxious about what you don't do, right? So that's really about core purpose. Core values are what you stand for, right? This is important. And I know this is going to sound super squishy, but the core values are what matters to you about this business. And how would the world be worse off if you were no longer in business? This is critical, because if you are not clear on this that means that your company culture is also ill-defined. Core values is what helps define your company culture. All good, Heinz. Core values is what helps define your company culture, and company culture and company brand is inextricably linked. That's why you have to recognize that when you take the time to define your core values, it's going to show up in your company culture, and it's absolutely going to be indicative in your company brand. And brand by itself, think of the companies that have very strong brands. Think of companies that have very strong brand identities. And you start thinking like, okay, like Qantas Airlines, right? Starbucks, Chick-fil-A here in the United States. Like, these are companies that have very, very strong brands because they have very deep cultures. And those are really important. So that's why when you start thinking about this, and I know I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, that's so squishy. That's so, that's so, eh, like it's so intangible. No, it's not. It has a very real tangible impact on the people that you're speaking to. And it shows in your passion when you're speaking from stage. So take the time to define your company core values. And I'll tell you, if it's your company core values is just an extension of you. Your business is just an extension of you. So take the time to define your core values that are in alignment with you. All right. So we talked about core purpose. We talked about core values. Now let's talk about client avatar. Client avatar is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? This is critical, because if you don't understand the people who are in your audience, especially if you're speaking from stage, it's not going to land. Your conversations from stage are going to get very watered down and wonky. This is important. So for those of you, my initial I put this out there, and this is I think I originally called this selling to a crowd, and I didn't get a lot of people that responded to it. And the people that did, they didn't really resonate with them because they were wanting different things. But when I started calling this selling from stage, selling, one-to-one as a business, or selling one-to-many as a business owner. Now people are like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want. Now my numbers went down, but the people who were engaged they were more leaning in. They're like, oh yeah, this makes more sense, right? It's important you understand your crowd. If you don't understand your crowd, if you don't understand your client avatar and ideally who it is that you want to serve, you're going to be like, well, anybody and anybody who, and guess what? When you start asking for anybody and everybody, you start getting anybody and everybody, like including people who are broke, and including people who don't resonate with your message, including people who don't align with your core values. So this is important. Define your avatar specifically. Who does the business serve? Who does the business serve? Who would the presentation serve? This is important. Don't skimp on this. Take the time to define who these people are. For me, I really like working with married people, married couples who have their own businesses, Generally, they're people of faith, right? They have faith in God. They have kids at home. Those are big things for me. And most of the time, when I attract that avatar, these are people who are usually just buried in work, and they have no time for themselves. They have no time for their friends or family. They barely have time for each other. That's a client avatar that I really like working with. I really like working with people who are in the services. Meaning like, contractors, coaches, consultants, people like that. I've really had good results with those sorts of people. People in manufacturing, not so much. Not that I can't, but I've worked with a few of them, and the results were inconsistent. So I really like sticking with people who are in the trades, right? People in services, people who own coffee shops, people who own, things like that, hospitality, real estate businesses, things like that. That's my client avatar. So when you start thinking about that, who specifically are they that you like working with? And define them geographically, demographically, and psychographically. So when you start thinking about this from a geographic perspective, think about where they are, right? So Heinz, you're in Vienna, right? If John, you're in Orlando, like who are these people that you're wanting? Are you wanting only in your immediate area, or where are they? Where are they specifically? Or could they be across the globe? That's fine. But make sure you understand the geographics. The demographics is basically who they are. Are they married? Are they single? Are they wealthy? Are they middle class, etc.? Right? Are they educated? Right? Do they have just a high school diploma? These are the sorts of things that you're looking for. When it comes to psychographics, you're thinking how they think and how they buy. How they think and how they buy. So I want you to think of ALIA, ALIA. You want to think of their attitudes. You want to think of their lifestyle. You want to think of their interests, and you want to think of their aspirations and goals. If you know these things, you start to know people pretty deep. And I can guarantee you have a friend or five who represents an avatar that you would like to serve, and you can start mimicking their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, their aspirations and goals. So if you understand their aspirations and goals, then you can start using language to reach them. Many people, for example, when I wrote my first book, my first couple books were in the real estate space. My first book was called The Time Wealthy Investor, and my re-release on that is The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. Now, many people in that space, they were real estate investors, and they love to throw the phrase around, well, I really want financial independence, is what they say. And I really want to create generational wealth. Those are two phrases that is filtered through front and back through that community. I know if I use that language, I'm going to reach them. Now, I don't particularly believe in generational wealth. I think it's a trap. I think the true generational wealth is education. I think the true generational wealth is a good sense of self-worth. I think a good true generational wealth is instilling a good work ethic. I don't think it's handing kids $10 million at the end of your life. I think that's not the idea of generational wealth, because most kids cannot handle that sort of thing. And it's a pretty special set of kids that could handle that. And it's pretty rare. So my generational wealth that I'm handing down to my kids is not going to be a big fat paycheck. That's not what that's going to be. So I'm just saying, for me, generational wealth is more about, is less about dollars or euros or anything like that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I understand their aspirations and goals. Now I can reach them in a certain way. And all of a sudden, people who align with my core values go, yeah, I really like what you said about that generational wealth thing. I think that's a trap too, now that the way that you put that. So I'm just saying, this is the 3 C's of business vision. Take the time, go through this exercise around core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And the rest of the systems here, and I know I didn't really hit the rest of the Viper methodology, but the Viper methodology is like, it covers vision, it covers infrastructure, it covers process, execution, and reporting. I don't want to get into the weeds on that right now. I do host another session around that with in the business growth multiplier. But if you are interested in that, that's another session that I hold. And if you'd like to check back on Eventbrite, the strategic business growth multiplier, I do get in the weeds on that. All right, so let's talk about the psychology. We talked about systems. Now let's talk about the psychology. So the systems are important, but the systems are only going to get you so far. And again, we talked about the systems part. Now let's talk psychology. Psychology comes in a couple different areas. You've got personal psychology, you've got business and organizational psychology. So individual psychology versus business and organizational psychology. From a personal perspective, you're looking at things like self-worth, you're looking at self-management, you're looking at limiting beliefs, right? This is critical because if you go on stage and you're selling and you're not confident in who you are, you're kind of like you got bringing some limiting beliefs, which we all have some. But you come to the stage and you're not sure about what it is that you're selling, it will absolutely show. It will absolutely manifest itself in front of a crowd. And the more people in the crowd, the more people it's going to manifest for. I'm just saying, like it is brutal. So everything's under a microscope. Every word you say is under a microscope when you're on stage. So you really have to work through this personal psychology piece, especially around self-worth. From the business side, the organizational psychology, you're looking at external and internal. We're going to focus on this specifically when you're looking at internal versus external. Internal, you're looking at things like management and leadership. External organizational psychology is around vendors and politics, but more specifically, it's around buyers. And it's about buying psychology and understanding buying psychology. Because if you don't understand buying psychology, you're not going to understand why the people in the crowd are going to want to buy from you. And that'll be really difficult to understand. Like you'll just go up on stage, you'll be hosting a bunch of seminars and webinars. And you're like, man, why am I not selling anything? Because you don't understand buying psychology. And that was the biggest problem that I had early on. I thought, well, if I go up there and I'm articulate and I teach really well and I say these $64 words and do all this stuff, they're going to want to buy from me. If I demonstrate that I'm a nice guy, I'm telling you, it does not work that way. You have to understand buying psychology and why people are going to want to buy from you. So, hint, it's about generating trust. It's about maintaining and it's about demonstrating trust and getting to trust as quick as possible. So let's talk about the 4 core functions of business first. The 4 core functions of business around lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And the customer's journey through your company happens in that order: lead generation, then sales, then operations, and accounting. So just let's go through the lead generation function really quick. When you're going your lead generation function, this is how you're targeting your ideal client avatar. And I know exactly who it is that I want to work with. And these are the sorts of people. It's much easier for me to direct my marketing to these people because I know them. I know who they are. I know what their problems are, right? I know their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, their aspirations, right? I know when they're sleeping. I know when they're awake, right? Like, not really, but I'm just saying, like, this is really important so you understand what it is that these people are wanting. And when you understand what they're wanting, then you just say, okay, well, I'm going to deliver that for you. Okay. And it brings me the clients with the most amount of money and it brings me the least amount of drama. So again, lead generation is just kind of lets the world know that you're out there through a variety of marketing approaches. And the sales conversation continues that conversation that's started by the marketing approach. Okay. And then it closes the loop. Now, when it comes to selling from stage, you're doing the lead generation obviously to get them in the room, but trust and know you're still doing lead generation as you still have them in the room. But the entire time, you're demonstrating value from stage. You're bringing value to them. That's what helps generate that trust, and that's what's going to help you in the selling conversation. If you're up there selling and pitching the entire time, and I appreciate what you said about pitching, but you really don't want to pitch because if they're going to feel sold to. Generate and demonstrate value. Bring value by demonstrating competence. Because when you demonstrate competence, that's the fastest way to create trust with the crowd. If they don't want to buy from you, it's because they don't trust. They either don't trust you, they don't trust your product or service, or they don't trust your company. Or worse, they don't trust themselves. They don't trust themselves. Or like again, let's face it. How many times have you bought something? And again, if I had 3 hands, I'd have them all up. If how many times have you bought something that you've never used, or you bought something and it didn't give you the results you wanted because you're like, well, maybe it was me, I really didn't do the thing with it I needed to do, right? There's plenty of courses that sit on my floor. Actually, I've moved them since, but have sat in the plastic because I never opened them. So how many times have I bought courses and stuff from stage from people who were from gurus who were selling things, and I never even went into the course after I bought it? Right, plenty. right? So I'm just saying this is why you have to recognize why they don't trust themselves, and you have to address those sorts of things. So the selling conversation is what closes the loop. I want to talk to you something about really quickly about buying psychology. I'm going to take my dome off the stage here for just a hot second, and just to demonstrate to you the 15 reasons why people will buy things. This is important for you to take the time to understand buying psychology in terms of why they're going to want to buy from you. Now, are there more reasons than 15? Probably. I don't know. But the point is that there's 15 reasons why people buy. And this is why you need to take the time to understand why they're going to want to buy. They're going to want to buy to make money, save time, avoid effort, escape pain. And that could be physical pain, it could be emotional pain, it could be spiritual pain, whatever it is. But they're also going to buy for more comfort. They're going to buy for better health, right? They could also buy for less stress. They'll buy to gain praise, feel more love, increase their status. They will buy for truth, and they will especially buy for truth if they have felt lied to in the past. So think about that. They'll buy for growth. They'll buy for novelty. They will also buy for certainty or for more perceived control. And they'll certainly buy for contribution. So here's what I want you to do. Take a screenshot of this. And what you're going to do is you're going to make a list of all the reasons directly and indirectly that your product or service helps them make money. I want you to think about that. And then I want you to go to the next one after you come up with 8 or 10 under make money. Again, directly or indirectly. And then I want you to think of directly or indirectly how your product or service helps people save money. And I want you to do that with all 15 of these. Now, some of them, you might say, well, how do I help people with better health, right? Like I'm an insurance salesman. Well, I mean, get creative. And the reason why I'm saying like, well, maybe they have less stress because they don't have to worry that if they get into a wreck that they're going to be covered because your insurance covers a lot of different things, right? You've explained a lot of things to them. Like, so they can have less stress in their life. Again, you might, this is where you have to get a little creative with the answers. But the reason for this is for you to get deep with your avatar. So you can start to create language that avatar will understand. And when you can do that with several people in your life who you know represent your avatar, and you go, well, how would I help Bobby make more money? You know, what would my product or service do to directly or indirectly help Bobby make more money? Right. And now you can start to really make it more tangible to that individual that you actually know. Like what is Bobby's attitudes, his lifestyles, his interests and aspirations and goals, right? And how can you help him come up with a reason to buy your product or service? Not that necessarily you're going to sell to Bobby, right? Don't be a jerk about it. But ask Bobby, use that person as a resource. There are probably dozens of people who represent your avatar in your circle. Ask them, right? Not necessarily to sell to them, but for information. So you can start to get really clear when you actually are trying to have people like that in a room that you're going to sell to. And it's also important that you understand the 7 principles of persuasion. And these 7 principles are reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. So that's the first 6. The last one is around being familial. All of these have been developed by Dr. Robert Cialdini, which is brilliant. And when you understand, like people will, if you give someone something of value, they're going to want to give something back of value to you. If I give you something of value, you're going to want to give me your email address. You're going to want to give me your attention, right? I'm giving you something of value. This is why, again, during this entire time, am I selling to you? I kind of am secretly. And you're like, well, how is he selling to you? He hasn't asked for any money yet. Yes, but I'm demonstrating things that I know that you guys can use. I'm demonstrating competence. I'm demonstrating things that I know that you guys can use in your business when you're selling from stage. And again, and I hear a lot of people saying, well, you can't teach while you're trying to sell at the same time. I absolutely reject that. I think you have to demonstrate value and show them that you know what you're talking about, because that's the only way they can judge you. Think about this. The market can only judge you by what you give away for free. The market can only judge you by your samples. Right now, you're sampling what I have. I'm really good at what I do. I'm at the top of my game in terms of what I do as a strategist. I have lots of knowledge and lots more to come. Right now, I'm in a PhD program for organizational psychology, and I have a background. My degree, my bachelor's degree, is in accounting. And the thing is, like, I have got so many I've got a broad range of tools at a very deep level among the 4 core functions of business, around lead gen, around sales, around operations, around accounting. So the thing is, I'm demonstrating to you some competence. Okay. That's reciprocity. You're giving me your valuable attention. You're giving me your valuable time in compensation for, you giving me your email address, right? Like I'm giving you information. You've given me your email address. I will keep in contact with you, right? I'm not going to blow you up with a bunch of stuff in your spam, hitting your spam all the time. But this is important. Reciprocity is a very big deal. Commitment and consistency. Again, this is important. I'll just go through the rest of these really fast. But because you've made a commitment, you're much more likely to stay consistent with any original commitments that you made. You made a commitment to be here today, right? For example, so many people who signed up didn't make it today. That's okay. I'm not salty about that. But the thing is, most people who make a commitment, they'll make a commitment and then they will stay consistent to that original commitment. And that is how people get persuaded. And that's all of a sudden you're like, how did I get here? How did I get to spending $100,000 for a weekend with Mark? I don't have $100,000 program, but I'm just saying, if I did, that's how it happens. People make micro commitments along the way, and then they make bigger commitments, and then they want to stay consistent to those original commitments. So that's how commitment and consistency works in persuasion. Social proof. This is just if you see other people doing it. If I told you I had 3 clients and you're like, you've had 3 clients? No. But if I said I've had thousands of clients, which I haven't quite had thousands, but definitely over 1,000 at this point, then you'd say, oh, okay. So now there's social proof, right? Like, well, if there's that many, it sounds like he at least knows some things. He can at least be helpful, right? That's social proof. If you get up, if you're walking in a room and you see a crowd getting up and heading towards an exit, you're like, what's going on? Should I head that way too? That's social proof. Liking is not necessarily what you think. Liking is not, do you like me? Which of course helps, but are you like me? Because if we are similar, that's basically like affinity. Like we have an affinity for one another because maybe we share the same geography. Maybe we share the same interests, but not do you like me, but are you like me? And then the more we are like one another, the more likely I'll be able to persuade you. Authority is, do I have authority? Do I speak with authority? I am literally an author of 8 different books. And so that gives me authority, right? So I'm an author who has authority. That's the root word of that. So there's ways that you can demonstrate authority. And that's important for you to demonstrate authority. Now you have to do this in kind of a careful way, because if you do this too much, people are going to start to resent you. So you have to make sure you go where they are. You meet them where they're at. If I'm up here like, well, I've done this and I've done that and I've done this, you kind of say it in almost an offhanded way, because if you keep doing that too much, people will just start to tune out after a while. So you got to be careful with demonstrating too much authority. Otherwise, people are going to feel like, oh, he's not like me because he's done all these things and I'm not there, right? So that can backfire on you. So demonstrate some authority, right? That definitely will help generate trust. Scarcity. Now, this has to be real scarcity. So if I said to you, hey, I've got a $25,000 program, and which I don't, by the way. I'm saying, but if I have a $25,000 program and I've only got 3 people that I can take, that's legit. And the reason why is because if I had something at that point right now, I wouldn't be able to take more than 3, because no offense, that'd be a lot of work for me to do the type of work that I want to do at that level. Okay. So I don't have any capacity for that right now. That's why I say I don't have that. I have stuff at lower levels, but my point is there's real scarcity there. If I said I have, I've only got 1 slot left, and that's real, like I'm not making this up, because the level I'd have to work with people at that level, I don't want to be that busy over the holidays. It makes sense. Reasons build trust. I used a very powerful word there called because, and that's really important. And I said, hey, I've only got 1 slot because I don't want to be overly busy over the holidays. You go, okay, that makes sense. There's real scarcity there. I'd better act on this if I'm interested. So there's got to be real scarcity. If I do that and I'm out of authenticity, and that person finds out that I took on more than 1 client, that can really backfire on you. So make sure it's real scarcity. The last one is familial, meaning like how familiar are they? Like how often do they see you? That could be one. That's why where social media posting can be really important. It's not necessarily marketing, but seeing that repetition with you over time is really, really important. So that familial side of it is really necessary. All of this is really important as you're heading onto stage as you're heading onto and having these conversations with people. So again, around the 4 core functions of business, we're talking lead generation, we're talking sales, we talked operations, and we're talking accounting. These are the 4 core functions of business. So all of these things, we don't need to necessarily get into the operational and operations and accounting perspective of this, because now we're talking about lead gen and sales, and we're talking about specifically selling from stage. So let's talk about selling to a crowd. When you create the presentation, right, you have to, we're going to talk about creating the offer, delivering massive amounts of value. We're talking about using story, and specifically we're talking about seeding. So let's talk about specifically creating the offer. When you're creating the offer, okay, let me back up. When you're creating the presentation, you want to create the offer first, and then you want to back into the offer. So think about this. When you're creating the offer, I want you to stop and consider the 15 reasons why people buy. I want you to match the offer to the length of the presentation. Why would that be important? Because if I have a $15,000 offer and I've got a 20-minute presentation, I have not had enough time to build trust with that audience. So unless I don't know, unless you're this offer was just such a no-brainer, but I'm telling you, like, you would be, that's too tough, right? You would need longer time to build trust with them. You need longer time to seed the audience. Seeding is, we'll talk about it in a minute, but seeding is where you kind of plant, like, hey, and I've done it a little bit here, but not on purpose, but maybe more subconscious, I guess, because I kind of do this automatically now. But I'd say, hey, I don't have a $200,000 offer, right? The problem is not the problem, but here's the issue here. This is about buying psychology. The mind has trouble with negation. So if I say I don't have a $200,000 offer, what are you hearing? You're hearing $200,000 offer. So when I come back and have a $10,000 offer, now you're like, oh, he said he didn't have a $200,000 offer, but now I hear 10,000, and that seems like a bargain. Okay. So I'm just saying these sorts of things really make a difference. And this is why it's important to seed. But this is also why you have to match the offer to the length of the presentation. So like today, if I have a free offer, and I do, like, you can join my Facebook group. I don't have anything to sell you today, but I'm saying, like, if you're gonna come into the room, sometimes free offers, you have to sell more. You have to, it's almost like you have to sell free offers harder than you do something where people will part with money. It's crazy. I don't know why, but that's pretty universally true among all the speakers that I've ever talked to. Selling free is a lot more difficult than selling for money. Although free is not nearly as, doesn't pay the bills as quite as good as the ones for money. But I'm just saying it's almost more difficult. So you want to consider the 15 reasons why people will buy when you're creating the offer, and why they're going to want to take this offer up for you. You're also going to want to match the offer to the length, and you're also going to want to match the offer to the content that you're putting together. So when you're, sorry, let me go back to that a second. When you're matching the offer to the content, here's what I'm saying. You want to teach them up to a point and then say, look, I don't have enough time, because you've got, let's say that you're with them for an hour, or let's say you're with them for 2 days. And then at the end, you've given them plenty of value. And a lot of times what I like to do is I almost like to take the overwhelm approach, where I'm going to say, I'm going to teach you a lot of what, and I'm going to teach you a lot of how. There was a big movement over the years, which I never felt good about, is, like the teaching what to do, but not how to do it. I just thought that was so just ick. Like, that made no sense to me, right? Teaching what, but not how. Like, what to do, but not how to do it. I want to teach what and how as much as possible, right? And I'll let people know, hey, look, this is beyond the scope of what we're talking about right now. But like, this is beyond the scope of this particular seminar. This is beyond the scope of this course. But just let people know that. I think they'll appreciate that. But match the offer to the content. That way, when you're delivering the content, you get to the end of where the offer is, and say, hey, look, this is the end of the presentation. If you'd like more, let me show you what working together would look like. That's it. You're not making it ick. You're not going, oh, here comes the ask. If you've delivered them tons of value, they're going to be grateful that they got the value from you. The reason you might feel icky is because you've done all this teaching what, but not how. Yeah, I would feel gross about that too. And I did, because that's what I was told to do. And finally, I was like, I do not like this style of teach. I don't like this style of selling from stage. Show them value, demonstrate values, give them some of the best stuff, because that is what the market is going to judge you by. They're going to judge you by your samples. And if they can't sample anything good except, well, yeah, give me $20,000 and then I'll show you the good stuff, that's a lot of risk that they're taking, even if you're offering a guarantee. And there's a lot of people who won't go back. They don't want to be that guy and send the steak back to the kitchen because it wasn't cooked well. They'll just eat the steak and then just, then you'll never hear from them again. So this is why it's important to, yeah, guarantees are good, but they don't guarantee that you're going to ever, like you're not going to get referrals or repeat business from people. All right. So when it comes to creating the presentation, again, creating the offer, now we want to deliver massive amounts of value. So when you're delivering massive amounts of value, again, this is what I talked about. Do not do what, not how. That, again, I've made that point. That drives me absolutely crazy. And the one thing it does is it violates trust, is that your job is to create trust. Your job is to demonstrate competence. And that is the fastest way to create trust. There's lots of other trust triggers, and that is something that I talked about in Marketing Magic. If you're interested, you can go to that again for free. Just go to Eventbrite and follow Strategic Boardroom, and you'll get notifications anytime that stuff comes up. But your job is to create massive amounts of trust. And if you're not demonstrating competence, or if you go up there and start like tearing down your own character. So the fastest way to build trust is to demonstrate competence. The fastest way to destroy trust is to demonstrate poor character. So for example, I haven't mentioned my bride, but I've been married for 11 years. We've got a 20-year-old, we got a 17-year-old, and we got a 3-year-old. Okay. If I mention like, oh yeah, I gotta meet up with my girlfriend after this, they're like, is he talking about someone not his wife? Like, right? Which I don't. I'm just saying, like, that would destroy my character. And no matter what it was that I was saying, you're like, man, that guy doesn't represent what I want to be about. Right. So that would destroy trust. So I'm just saying, you've got to be careful about protecting your character, but show and demonstrate lots of competence. That's what's going to create trust the fastest with your audience. So don't hold back. Come up with your secret sauce. And if you don't have more sauce, we'll make more sauce, right? You just make more recipes, right? Be good at what you do. And the fastest way, again, this is the point here, the fastest way to create trust is to demonstrate competence. So we talked about creating the offer. We talked about demonstrating and delivering massive amounts of value. Now let's talk about using story. So this use of story is really, really important because it makes you relatable. And, this is where you can use testimonials or case studies. For example, this is a couple that I have worked with for the last 5 or 6 years now, Brian and Kara Kiefer. And when they came to me, they had 2 kids. They had one on the way. And Brian he owned a coffee shop, he owned a diner, and he was looking to get into the real estate space. And this is interesting that now they've got 3 children, and he since sold the diner. He's got a lot of real estate, and he's doing much, much better in his coffee business because of the work we've been doing together. Brian's put in a ton of work, but the point is that he's done a lot of really cool stuff. Right. So let me explain to you in terms of how that is, right? Like what that looks like. And this is how the the Viper methodology works with any small business, and it's translatable into all that. Right. So the reason I'm making this point here is that when you're sharing testimonials or case studies, you can put yourself in their shoes for just a minute. Okay. That's why it's really important to use testimonials or case studies. And if you don't have any, that's okay. You can use metaphors, right? You can use, like, let's say Joe had this problem, right? And you walk them through Joe's typical issue, right? But sometimes if you're doing the type of work where you really can't share testimonials or case studies, that's okay. Use a composite and come up with, hey, this is a composite of people that I've worked with in the past. It's not the real names. This is not the real businesses, but this is typically what I've been able to do for them. Right. And people will appreciate the fact that you've at least told them some story that they can put themselves in. And this is also why I like to use something called a 3T format. The 3T story format it follows title, triggering event, and then transformation. Title, triggering event, transformation. So I'm going to give you a quick example of what that could look like. So when I was little, I was 7 years old, and I got super upset with my parents because I wanted to go into the store to buy something. And I was so mad, and it was nighttime. It was like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And at that point, I lived in New York. And at that point in time, it was getting dark. So I got out, shut the door, and I started walking home. Now, keep in mind, we lived in the middle of nowhere. And from where it was from town was probably about 4 miles. And I was like 7 or 8 years old. So I knew the way home, but it was dark, like dark. And I was going like it was a ways home. So but I was like steaming mad, and I don't even remember exactly what it was about. But as I'm walking, I'm realizing that, oh my gosh, I'm all alone, and every car that drove by and every sound I would hear in the woods all of a sudden was magnified by 1,000 times. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, what did I do? I really put myself into a bad situation because of my temper. All right. So let's unpack what I did there for a hot second. The title, I was a young boy. I was 7 years old. I was like having a fit about wanting to go into the store and buy something, and they wouldn't let me. Okay. So that was the title, right? That's where I was. The triggering event is me getting out of the car and walking down the road until I was like, and eventually realizing like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Because now I'm in the middle of this road alone, and I'm miles from either direction from my house, and I have no idea where my family is. Right now, they didn't let me get that far ahead. They actually were following me. I didn't know that at the time, but they came up, and of course I'm bawling, and they brought me into the car. Right, but the transformation was realizing that I let my temper get the best of me. Okay. So think about how you could use that as a title, triggering event, and transformation, how you could use that in the form of a story. It took me less than a minute to tell that story. But the thing is, this is a way that you can help transport the listener. You can transport the person in the crowd to your story, and they put themselves in that story, right? It's hard for them not to do that. So using story is really powerful, especially when you're trying to show them and demonstrate your competence, especially when you're trying to show and demonstrate that you know what you're talking about or how it relates to your product or service. That's really, really powerful. But you've got to have this stuff baked in the cake. Don't fly by the seat of your pants when it comes to the 3T story format. Know your stories up in advance, and have them practiced, have them rehearsed. Sorry. So let's talk about seating. Seating is you got to be careful with seating. Okay, seating is when you're doing something that's called the contrast principle, and people can overuse this. It's kind of like lavender. A little goes a long way, or curry. And probably curry is a better example. But so a lot of times when people say, "Oh, like when you work with me," right? Like that's kind of a cheesy way to do it. I don't really do that. I'm just saying, like, if we decide to work together, if we're ever working together in the future, but I don't even really consider that seating. I think that's just something that's just letting people know that I actually work with people as a strategist. That's kind of letting people know. So I don't really know that that's seating, but seating is like using the contrast principle. And this is one way where you can do this when you're talking about the contrast principle. So for example, let's start to, like, again, I used this earlier on, is like say, hey, I don't have a $200,000 program. So when I come back with a $10,000 program, that's known as the contrast principle, right? It's the college student who calls up and says, hey, mom and dad, I'm pregnant. And they're like, what? And they're like, just kidding. I just got a C in English, right? In college, you're like, oh, thank God you're not pregnant, right? So it's kind of like using the contrast principle. So I'm just saying, like, there's ways that you can do that. But again, you can massively overuse it. One time, that's all you need to do it. One time during the presentation, say, hey, look, I don't have 100,000, or whatever you're going to buy. And it's not, if you're selling insurance or whatever it is, hey, it's not a $50,000 policy for $10,000 a month. It's not something crazy. Give them something reasonable. Generally, it's dimes for dollars. So if you say like, hey, I don't have a $10,000 thing, then you can have a $1,000 product or service, right? That's generally how that works. And you can use the seating to also help manage their expectations, right? Where you're saying, hey, look, this isn't going to take like 30 hours, right? But it might take 3 hours, right? You can use that contrast principle to help manage expectations as well. So when you're delivering the presentation, I want you to remember reciprocity, right? You give them good value, give them lots of value, give them things that they can really use, things that would be tangible, and ask them, hey, generally I don't do a Q&A at the end because that kills your sales. You want to just say, hey, was this valuable? Okay, cool. Now you can start to, and you might do that and say, okay, what did you learn? Right. And they start giving you back. Okay, what did your big takeaway? Okay, great. But then I want to head directly into the sale. Right. So I want to present the offer in a value stack. So when I'm presenting the offer in a value stack, what that means is, and I also want to make sure that I also have a crystal clear call to action. That's really, really important, because if you're not really clear in terms of sending them, click on this thing right now, like right here, click this link, people will just not do it. If you say, hey, sign up, and you're not really clear about what signing up means, they won't sign up. You really need to be really crystal clear about your call to action. So when you're talking about your value stack, this is where you divorce price from value. Price and value are not the same thing. Price is, this is the cost of the thing. The value is what it means to that individual. So again, if I was going to sell you this pink pen, right? And this pink pen to one of you on here would go, well, that's like a cheap 50-cent pen, right? So for you, you'd go, I wouldn't even pay 50 cents for it because I don't like pink and that doesn't do anything for me, right? You can have it. You can have your stupid pen. Some of you might go, oh my gosh, is that a, I can't even read this. Is that a Uniball? I don't even know what it says. We'll say it's Uniball, right? Okay, yes, it is. And they're like, oh my gosh, that would complete my set. I have been looking for everywhere for that pen. What would you take for it? I'm like, I don't know. This is like now, could I sell it for 50 cents? Sure. But if this is going to complete their set, to them, it's much more valuable. To them, they might go, oh, I'll pay you $5 for it. I'm like, for this pen? I'm like, sure, sold, right? So that's what I'm saying, where you have to divorce price from value, because for them, having a completed set might be priceless. It might be worth $100 or more, right? Because for them, that's a big deal. So this is where you have to divorce price from value. So in other words, if I'm selling a program that is, say, $10,000, but it can help you make $100,000, sort of makes sense, right? Or it gets you back 30 hours a month of your time. That is where you start to divorce price from value. You're like, yes, wealthy people buy back their time, right? They use that money to buy back their time. So this is where it's important, and you start to recognize that, again, the value should be massively exceed the price by at least 10x. That's what's really important. So the value stack, the way that you do this, let's say that you have thing one valued at $4,000 and you have thing two valued at $6,000, whatever it is. So it's like, hey, so the way that you do this when you're doing your value stack, you just say, hey, everybody, let me tell you about thing number one. Thing number one is amazing. This is how you present it, and how you present this really, really makes a difference. So you want to repeat each value, each line item in the value stack every single time you get into it. So this is the thing, right? So, hey, let me tell you about thing one. In thing one, this is where you're going to talk about the features. You're going to talk about the benefits. And this is where you're also going to talk about the meaning, what it means to them. Most people just say, oh, this is my course. It's got 30 hours of material in it, and it'll explain a lot of things for you. That sounds like I'm signing up for homework. That sounds terrible. But if I say, hey, yeah, this is a course, it's very granular. And what it's going to do is it's going to teach you this. But what that will mean for you is now you don't have to sign up for a course at the local university not knowing what you're actually going to learn. This is going to teach you everything you need to learn about X. No question, right? Or your money back, right? So that's valued at $4,000. Now we get to thing two. So now what I do is I reiterate value one, thing one. Okay, so we talked about thing one, right? That's the course which is going to show you all these different things, so you don't have to worry about learning X, Y, or Z, right? It's going to teach you everything you need to know about that. Now let's talk about thing two. This is easily valued at $6,000, and what this does is it's a infrastructure. It's a piece of software that works right in alignment with thing one. So everything you learned in thing one is incorporated into the software in thing two, and that's easily worth $6,000, if not more. Let's look at thing three. So in addition to thing one, which is about all the learning, you see what I'm doing? I'm reiterating each line item. So in addition to thing one, which is the education, the thing two, which is the software that aligns with that. Now we're going to be talking about thing three, which is one-to-one consulting. And that's easily valued at $8,000. Okay. So That is, so all of these things. So what that means is you can ask all these questions. We hop on a Zoom call, blah, blah, blah. Right. And finally, we've got the bonus. So in addition to thing one, which is this, and it does this, in addition to thing two, which is this and does this. Does it sound redundant? Yes, it is. I'm just letting you know this is what you have to do, because otherwise people just think it's the last thing that you said. And that's just the way human nature is. So in addition to thing one, which is this, and it means this for you, in addition to thing two, which is this and does this for you, you got thing three, which is this and does this for you. We hop on a Zoom call, right? We explains all this stuff. And here's the bonus. Now the bonus should be the granddaddy like thing of them all. Like that's the big thing. In addition to that, I'm going to come on site with you for a full day and do all this implementation training for one day. Like you have me one day, it's valued at $10,000 and that's the value. So that's everything. So in addition, so then you just kind of do it all. So let's recap all this. So basically what you're going to do now, I'm going to bring this back up. You get thing one, which is the education. Thing two, which is the software, which implements everything that you learned in thing one. You get thing three, which is we hop on Zoom calls for an entire month. You can ask me any questions that you want, which is related to the education, which is related to the software package. And you can ask any sort of questions around that. And then the bonus is everything, all the questions that or all the things that you learned from thing one, software from thing two, anything that you may have learned from me and the Zoom calls. Now I'm going to be on site to make sure that your entire staff can implement this whole thing. Okay. So that total value is at $28,000. All right. Today's price is $19.97, but you got to do it today. You see what I did? I wrapped in scarcity, right? But you got to do that today. And the reason for that is because I can only take on so many clients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now I made some outlandish claims. That's very extremely low unless you were local in town. Would I actually go to someone's job site to do this sort of thing? But that's a value stack. Okay. So again, it's really important that you do that. And the most valuable thing is the thing at the end. So that's how you do a value stack. So this is, again, the one thing also is it should also include a guarantee. The longer, the better. All of my courses, I'm pretty sure I can say all of my courses have a 13-month guarantee. Like, especially the one where people spend, more than $100. Why a 13-month guarantee? 1 month to learn everything in the course and another year to implement. And I truly want people to come back and go, you know what? I tried this. It's crap. I want all my money back. Okay. Right. I don't question it. It's never happened, but I do that because I really truly believe in what I'm putting together is good material. So that's why, it may not necessarily be the most, professionally produced, right? But it's really good material and people appreciate that the material is really good. So, and it really changes things for them. So this is where, you start thinking remember reciprocity, remember presenting offer, and reciprocity is, again, provide lots of value. Remember how to do a value stack. Now that crystal clear call to action is being really specific in what it is that you have to do. This is like, hey, you need to click this link right now. Go to this link. I will wait. Right. And that's what you're doing. Like you want them. And it's also important that they, why do they have to do it? And more important is why do they have to do it now? Look, if you wait too long, people are not going to come back. Like you're not going to be able to wait if you do this, I've only got a couple of these and you may not be able to do it. Or, hey, if you wait, the reality is you're going to get on the other side of this and you're not going to do it. So this is really important that you give them really compelling reasons as to why to do it. Number one, and why they have to do it now. Because if they're not going to have a compelling reason to do it now, they're not going to do it at all. It's just, again, human nature. So give them a reason to do it and then give them a reason to do it now. So that is everything. Let's talk about some success strategies really quick. Again, the key points is you don't need to convince them to buy, right? That removes the ick factor. If you're providing lots of value, again, the people on the call here today, like you don't have to, like, again, there's a lot of people on this call and some people have dropped off. That's fine. They've got different things going on in their life. But the point is I have delivered a lot of value and I feel pretty good. If I came up with an offer right now, which I don't have an offer, but if I came up with an offer right now, I would feel really good about it because I've delivered a lot of value that you guys can take back and start utilizing right away. All right. And this is the other thing is too, is you have to follow up with people, follow up follow them, follow through, just keep following them, and make sure that you are, hey, demonstrating. And when you do follow up, bring more value. Don't keep pestering them saying, are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? Are you ready to pull the trigger? Just keep showing them and demonstrating value. And then 1 out of 4, value, 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 ask, right? That's the 4-to-1 ratio in terms of demonstrating and delivering value. And then you can ask after you've done that value for 4 times. And that's on average, right? So you can do 3-to-1, sometimes 5-to-1 on others, but I would say the average is 4-to-1. All right. So the other thing is about having a support system. If you guys are interested, you can go to the Time Wealthy Advantage room. We're going to go ahead and put that link up in the chat right now. So if you are interested, you can go to the Time Wealthy Advantage. There it is. Let me copy and paste that. I'm going to put that in here. And there you go. Okay. There you go. And that is all I have, everybody. Thanks so much for sticking around. I really do appreciate it. And again, let me know how this works for you. If you're struggling a little bit with your sales, if you're struggling with doing this from stage, here's the thing: get your reps in. Do things like this on Eventbrite. Go and just do stuff on meetups, host meetups, do stuff on YouTube, do stuff on Facebook, but just get out there and just start doing it. You're only going to get better through repetition. That's the only, there's no way around this. You can do it in front of a mirror, but I'm telling you, there's nothing that raises that blood pressure quite like doing it in front of a live crowd. And I really appreciate you guys sticking around today. So thanks so much. Have a great day. We'll see you guys next time.